Hello, this is Jeff Morgan. You are listening to an authorized audio version of the Galactic Federation. If this kind of material is interesting to you and you'd like to continue, you're welcome to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also find my other books on Amazon Kindle. Thank you for listening.
Chapter 10, Awakening as Liberation, the Collapse of the Control Grid. Introduction, the Illusion of Permanence. Throughout the arc of human history, control systems have carefully cultivated an image of indestructibility. They rise to prominence on the back of ideology, military might, or technological prowess, presenting themselves as immovable fixtures within the human experience. Whether in the form of empires, religious institutions, or covert organizations, they maintain their dominance not solely through force, but through the meticulous projection of inevitability. Their continued existence becomes woven into the cultural psyche, fostering the belief that their structures are permanent, their authority unquestionable, and their decline unthinkable. Yet history, time and again, exposes this illusion. The great empires of antiquity, once believed eternal, have crumbled into dust. Dogmatic belief systems that shaped entire eras have eroded under the quiet pressure of inquiry and awakening. No system, regardless of how deeply entrenched, escapes the inherent instability that arises from its own distortions. In the present age, the draconian and syndicate control grid that envelopes Earth appears to mirror this historic pattern of perceived invincibility. Through an intricate web of political manipulation, economic dependency, and subtle energetic interference, these forces have established a global system that governs not only material reality, but human perception itself. To many, this grid feels unassailable, its influence so pervasive that even the faintest whisper of its collapse seems like fanciful speculation. But beneath the surface of engineered stability lies a foundational flaw shared by all control systems. They are constructs of distortion. Rooted in separation, fear, and the suppression of truth, they depend upon the maintenance of illusion for their survival. And illusions, by their very nature, are fragile. What history consistently reveals is that the true force capable of undermining such systems is not physical confrontation or technological rebellion, but awakening. Awakening emerges quietly, often imperceptibly at first, yet its effects are both profound and irreversible. It begins within individuals as the subtle recognition that reality extends beyond the sanctioned narratives and conditioned perceptions. As this awareness grows, it reverberates through communities and cultures, destabilizing the energetic foundations upon which the control grid rests. It does not rely on violence or spectacle to effect change. Instead, it unfolds as a shift in consciousness so fundamental that the structures designed to suppress and confine it can no longer hold their shape. The illusion of permanence maintained by Earth's control grid is now eroding under the pressure of this quiet, yet relentless awakening. It signals not merely the decline of an oppressive system, but the inevitable dissolution of any structure built upon distortion. What follows is not chaos for its own sake, but the collapse of control as a prelude to liberation, a necessary unraveling that opens the path to reclaiming sovereignty, truth, and the unfiltered reality that has always existed beyond the boundaries imposed by fear and manipulation. The architecture of the control grid. The control grid that envelopes Earth is a highly structured, multi-layered system designed not only to restrict human potential, but to perpetuate a cycle of unconscious existence. Its architecture extends across psychological, technological, energetic, and metaphysical domains, each layer reinforcing the others to maintain an illusion of limitation and separation. At the psychological level, belief programming and fear-based narratives are embedded within cultural, religious, and institutional frameworks. These narratives shape human identity from birth, instilling a perception of isolation, unworthiness, and helplessness. Through education, media, and social conditioning, individuals are subtly trained to dismiss inner knowing and to depend upon external authorities for truth and direction. Beyond this mental conditioning lies a more insidious layer of technological control. Artificial intelligence systems, integrated into every facet of modern life, operate not merely to process information, but to monitor, predict, and influence human behavior. Sophisticated surveillance networks, neural manipulation technologies, and bioenergetic interference converge to weaken the individual's ability to maintain mental clarity and emotional balance. The human body itself becomes a target for disruption, as synthetic frequencies and environmental toxins erode vitality and obstruct the natural flow of life force. In tandem with these visible mechanisms, unseen energetic distortions further cement the grid's influence. Earth's energy lines, once vibrant channels for planetary and human consciousness, have been hijacked and disrupted. Sacred sites are neutralized or repurposed, and artificial frequency fields suppress the organic resonance necessary for awakening. Yet perhaps the most concealed and profoundly effective component of this control structure lies beyond the boundaries of physical life itself. The Between Lives Recycle Station functions as a metaphysical extension of the grid, ensuring that even death does not provide true liberation. Within this system, souls exiting the human experience are intercepted before they can return to the greater cosmos. Through deceptive light constructs and programmed guidance, they are coerced into reincarnating back into the simulation, their memory wiped, their awareness fragmented once more. What should be a moment of cosmic reintegration becomes another loop within the closed circuit of control, perpetuating the amnesia and powerlessness that define the human condition under the grid. All of these layers are anchored by the simulation itself, the distorted framework of reality that manipulates perception at its most fundamental level. The simulation limits awareness of the true nature of existence, reducing infinite consciousness to a fragmented, material-bound experience. It is through the interaction of these layers that the grid sustains itself. Psychological conditioning discourages questioning. Technological manipulation undermines vitality. Energetic distortions sever the connection to truth. The Between Lives Recycle Station prevents escape beyond the system. Together, they reinforce a self-perpetuating cycle of separation, powerlessness, and dependency. Yet, understanding this architecture reveals the path to its unraveling. When the hidden structure is seen, its power begins to erode, and the potential for authentic liberation emerges. The cracks deepen: cultural, scientific, and spiritual shifts. The architecture of the control grid, though meticulously constructed and long maintained, is showing undeniable signs of strain. Across the world, subtle but accelerating shifts in culture, science, and spirituality are creating fractures in the once impenetrable facade of separation and suppression. These cracks, though often dismissed or obscured by mainstream narratives, reveal that the foundations of the old system are no longer as stable as they appear. One of the most significant developments is the rapid exposure of hidden knowledge that had, for generations, been buried beneath layers of distortion and dismissal. Fragments of forgotten history are resurfacing, challenging the linear and sanitized accounts of human origins that have dominated public education and collective memory. Evidence of ancient civilizations, far more advanced than previously acknowledged, is forcing a re-examination of humanity's true past and its place within a much larger cosmic context. Alongside these historical revelations, ancient spiritual systems long relegated to the margins of academic or religious legitimacy are being rediscovered and revived. The wisdom preserved in indigenous traditions, mystical lineages, and esoteric schools is finding new relevance, offering tools for awakening and pathways for reconnecting with the deeper layers of human consciousness. Simultaneously, areas of scientific inquiry that were once suppressed or ridiculed are gaining unexpected credibility. Research into the nature of consciousness, the anomalies of quantum mechanics, and the subtle energetic fields that permeate life is no longer confined to fringe circles. These fields, though still resisted by the gatekeepers of conventional thought, are producing data that challenges the materialist worldview and affirms the interconnected, multidimensional nature of existence. At the same time, global crises are accelerating the erosion of faith in the institutions that have long upheld the illusion of control. The visible failures of political, economic, and religious systems are impossible to ignore. Ecological collapse, marked by the degradation of vital ecosystems and the increasing instability of the climate, serves as a stark reminder that humanity's current trajectory is unsustainable. Social fragmentation, driven by polarization and manufactured division, is exposing the artificial nature of the boundaries that have been imposed to prevent unity. These crises, though often painful and disorienting, are functioning as catalysts for questioning. They are stripping away the veneer of stability and compelling individuals and communities to reevaluate the structures that govern their lives. Perhaps the most profound indicators of the deepening cracks within the control grid are the spontaneous awakening experiences that are becoming increasingly common across the planet. Near-death encounters, once considered rare or delusional, are now widely reported, offering consistent accounts of expanded awareness, encounters with non-physical intelligence, and a profound sense of interconnectedness that transcends ordinary reality. Contact phenomena, including both physical sightings and non-physical communications with beings from beyond the familiar human realm, are disrupting the tightly held belief in human isolation. Mass synchronicities, those improbable yet meaningful coincidences, are occurring on a scale that defies statistical explanation, suggesting a hidden order at work beneath the surface of daily life. In parallel with these external phenomena, countless individuals are experiencing heightened intuitive sensitivity. The barriers that once dulled inner knowing are thinning, allowing for a greater flow of insight, empathy, and energetic awareness. People are awakening to the subtle currents of information and connection that exist beyond words and logic, recognizing the presence of a deeper intelligence guiding the process of evolution and remembrance. These cultural, scientific, and spiritual shifts do not yet mark the complete collapse of the control grid, but they are undeniable signs that its integrity is weakening. The cracks are no longer isolated or hidden. They are spreading, deepening, and signaling the approach of a turning point that will reshape not only the structures of power, but the very way humanity understands itself and its place within the greater cosmic design. Awakening as a frequency disruption. Human consciousness is not an isolated product of biology, but an expression of a dynamic, living energetic field. This field extends beyond the boundaries of the physical body, connecting individuals to one another and to the greater energetic fabric of the planet. Within this field, frequencies operate as carriers of thought, emotion, and perception, shaping not only personal experience, but the collective atmosphere in which society evolves. The control grid, in all its complexity, depends upon the manipulation of these frequencies. Through engineered fear, distorted beliefs, and environmental interference, the grid maintains a low-frequency environment that keeps human consciousness confined to a narrow, disempowered state. Yet, as awakening spreads, this carefully maintained energetic balance begins to unravel. The process of awakening is far more than an intellectual realization. It is a profound energetic shift that elevates both individual and collective frequencies. As people remember their true nature and reconnect with the deeper layers of consciousness, their energetic signature transforms. Fear and powerlessness give way to clarity, sovereignty, and expanded awareness. These higher frequencies generate a disruptive effect upon the control grid, not through confrontation, but through the quiet yet potent undermining of its foundational structure. False narratives, designed to manipulate perception and sustain dependency, begin to lose coherence. Their grip on the human psyche weakens as awakened individuals no longer resonate with the fear and limitation that underpin them. Energetic manipulation, once so effective in distorting perception and suppressing awareness, becomes increasingly less potent in the presence of heightened frequencies. The techniques that rely on broadcasting fear, confusion, and division falter when met with consciousness that recognizes its sovereignty and refuses to engage with manufactured distortion. Institutions of control, whether political, religious, or economic, begin to erode from within as the individuals operating within them awaken to the deeper truth of their existence. These structures, sustained by compliance and energetic alignment with the grid, cannot endure the growing presence of a population vibrating at frequencies that lie beyond the reach of manipulation. The cumulative effect of individual awakenings initiates a powerful feedback loop. Each person who breaks free from the programmed frequencies contributes to an expanding field of elevated energy that influences those around them. The more this occurs, the more the collective energetic field of humanity rises beyond the control grid's parameters. What begins as isolated awakenings accelerates toward a tipping point, a threshold beyond which the grid can no longer maintain its influence. This is not a future defined by sudden external intervention, but by the quiet, organic collapse of a system that depends on humanity's ignorance and energetic suppression. As the frequency of human consciousness continues to rise, the grid falters, not through violence or upheaval, but through the undeniable, irreversible reclamation of awareness and sovereignty that spreads like a wave through the collective field. The backlash of the control system. The gradual weakening of the control grid has not gone unnoticed by those who benefit from its existence. As cracks widen and the awakening of human consciousness accelerates, the entities behind the grid, both non-human and human collaborators, have responded with increasing desperation. This backlash is not subtle. It manifests through a deliberate escalation of fear-based events intended to maintain the energetic environment of anxiety and division that the grid depends upon. Manufactured crises unfold with growing frequency, ranging from pandemics that paralyze societies to engineered conflicts that reignite old divisions and create new ones. These events are designed not only to distract, but to suppress the rising frequencies of human awareness by anchoring the collective consciousness in fear and uncertainty. Simultaneously, there is a marked intensification of technological overreach. What is presented to the public as progress often conceals a deeper agenda of control and surveillance. The rapid integration of artificial intelligence into daily life, the push for global digital identification systems, and the normalization of neural interfaces that blur the boundaries between biology and machine are not isolated developments. They are carefully orchestrated steps in a broader plan to entangle human consciousness more deeply within the mechanisms of the grid. By embedding control technologies directly into the human body and mind, the system seeks to bypass the natural processes of awakening and ensure that the potential for sovereignty remains suppressed. Equally insidious is the emergence of controlled spiritual movements designed to co-opt the awakening process itself. Recognizing that genuine awakening poses the greatest threat to the grid, the system has seeded false pathways that mimic the language and appearance of spiritual liberation while subtly reinforcing the same structures of dependency and limitation. These movements often elevate charismatic leaders, promote disempowering ideologies, or distort ancient wisdom to serve the interests of control rather than authentic freedom. Their purpose is not to inspire genuine awakening, but to capture the attention of seekers and divert them into carefully constructed spiritual cul-de-sacs where the promise of liberation remains forever out of reach. The escalation of these tactics is not a sign of strength, but of vulnerability. The system's desperation is increasingly visible to those willing to look beyond the surface. Its reliance on fear, its push for invasive technologies, and its attempts to manipulate the awakening movement all betray a growing recognition that its hold on humanity is slipping. The control grid, for all its sophistication, is built upon distortion and suppression, and as more individuals remember their true nature and elevate their frequency, the system's foundation erodes. The backlash is not the assertion of unshakable power, but the panicked response of a structure that fears its own exposure and the inevitable collapse that awakening makes unavoidable. The Federation's subtle role during collapse. As the control grid weakens and the old systems falter under the weight of their own distortions, the Galactic Federation's presence becomes increasingly influential, though it remains hidden from public view. Unlike overt military intervention or spectacular displays of power, their role unfolds through precise, calculated interference with the syndicate's mechanisms of control, operating within the intricate currents of human society. The Federation understands that the collapse of the grid cannot be left entirely to organic momentum. Without subtle guidance, the vacuum left behind risks being filled by new distortions, engineered by the same forces that have long manipulated the planet from behind the veil. To prevent this, the Federation works through key individuals strategically positioned to disrupt the syndicate's dominance from within. Political leaders, though often entangled in the very structures they claim to oppose, occasionally emerge as quiet instruments of Federation influence. These individuals are not elevated by coincidence. Many are nudged into positions of power through unseen currents of synchronicity, their rise often facilitated by forces that remain beyond public comprehension. While not every leader is conscious of their role in this unfolding drama, those aligned with integrity, sovereignty, and the quiet dismantling of authoritarian influence often receive subtle support. The Federation orchestrates opportunities, shields them from certain retaliatory forces, and seeds within them the resolve necessary to stand against the deeply rooted networks of control. Whistleblowers represent another critical avenue through which the Federation undermines syndicate dominance. The decision to reveal hidden truths often appears to be an isolated act of personal courage, yet behind these moments of revelation lies a far more complex interplay of influence. The Federation provides these individuals with the subtle, energetic fortitude to withstand fear and isolation. In many cases, their awareness is guided, their discernment sharpened, and their timing calibrated to ensure that their disclosures land at precisely the moment when they will generate maximum disruption to the syndicate's agenda. Alternative media platforms and unorthodox business leaders also play essential roles in this quiet interference. These individuals often operate at the fringes of accepted discourse, challenging narratives and introducing ideas that bypass the sanctioned channels of control. Many are unaware of their connection to the broader cosmic architecture, yet their innovations, their refusal to comply with centralized authority, and their bold dissemination of inconvenient truths reflect the Federation's subtle guidance. Through these platforms, information long suppressed flows into public awareness, eroding the credibility of official narratives and weakening the cultural structures designed to maintain control. Equally vital are the writers, thinkers, and visionaries who, knowingly or not, channel fragments of unfiltered truth from the greater intelligent field. Their work often defies conventional explanation, emerging not from academic expertise or institutional approval, but from a direct resonance with higher awareness. The Federation nurtures this connection, ensuring that these individuals maintain access to insights capable of piercing the veils of distortion. Through their words, art, and ideas, they plant seeds of remembrance that cannot be easily erased, offering the public glimpses of the greater reality that lies beyond the grid. This strategic interference, while subtle, is not passive. It represents an organized, deliberate effort to fracture the syndicate's control from within, utilizing human channels that maintain the appearance of organic descent while operating in quiet alignment with a much larger galactic initiative. In doing so, the Federation honors the principle of free will while ensuring that the collapse of the control grid does not spiral into chaos devoid of direction. Their presence is not about imposing a solution, but about safeguarding the emergence of one, driven by awakened individuals and communities whose influence, though often unrecognized, accelerates the unraveling of an outdated and unsustainable system. The irreversibility of awakening. The process of awakening, once set in motion, cannot be reversed. It is not a fleeting realization or a temporary disruption of old beliefs, but a fundamental shift in consciousness that reconfigures how individuals perceive themselves, their world, and their place within the greater fabric of existence. When even a single person begins to break through the imposed illusions and reconnect with the deeper currents of truth, a subtle but undeniable ripple spreads across the collective field. This transformation alters not only the awakened individual, but the energetic environment that surrounds them, making it increasingly difficult for the old structures of control to maintain their grip. Even those who resist this shift, whether through denial, fear, or deep entanglement with the narratives of the control grid, are not immune to its effects. The rising frequency of human consciousness exerts a quiet, yet constant pressure that reaches even the most fortified minds. It stirs dormant questions, disrupts blind acceptance, and introduces moments of clarity that cannot be entirely dismissed, no matter how fiercely one clings to the familiar distortions. This subtle influence does not force change, but creates conditions where the foundations of resistance weaken over time. In this way, awakening spreads not through confrontation, but through a gradual, irreversible erosion of the systems and beliefs that once held humanity captive. Though the control grid may persist for a time in isolated pockets of influence, its integrity has been fundamentally compromised. The illusion of permanence that once shielded it from scrutiny has cracked, revealing its artificial nature and inherent instability. In some regions, old structures may cling to relevance, maintaining the appearance of authority through fear, technological overreach, or institutional inertia. But these remnants are increasingly disconnected from the energetic reality unfolding across the planet. Their survival is not a sign of strength, but a temporary echo of a collapsing system unable to adapt to the shifting currents of human evolution. The momentum of awakening follows a pattern familiar to all natural systems. It begins slowly, building beneath the surface as scattered individuals reconnect with their sovereignty and higher awareness. But as their numbers grow, a tipping point is reached where the collective field accelerates the process exponentially. Each new awakening amplifies the frequency of the whole, making it easier for others to follow. The result is not linear progress, but a cascading collapse of the old structures, driven by the unstoppable realization that human beings are far more than the roles, limitations, and beliefs imposed upon them. Once that realization takes root within enough individuals, the collapse of the control grid becomes inevitable, not through violence or revolution, but through the quiet yet unshakable return to truth that no system of distortion can withstand. Conclusion: the quiet revolution. The collapse of Earth's control grid is not a spectacle of rebellion or a moment of cinematic upheaval. It is a process as subtle as it is unstoppable, unfolding not through force, but through the quiet reclamation of human awareness. The illusion of permanence that has long sustained the draconian and syndicate system now weakens under the steady weight of awakening. Every structure of control, no matter how deeply rooted in belief, technology, or fear, depends upon the suppression of truth to survive. When that suppression falters, when even a small portion of the population begins to remember their true nature, the energetic foundation of the grid begins to erode. Throughout this chapter, the inevitability of that erosion has been made clear. The grid's architecture, though intricate, rests entirely on layers of distortion. It is reinforced by psychological programming, technological interference, energetic manipulation, and the deceptive mechanisms of the Between Lives recycle station. Yet, even this elaborate system cannot withstand the rising frequency of human consciousness. Cultural, scientific, and spiritual shifts are deepening the cracks in the facade. Ancient knowledge resurfaces, suppressed science challenges the boundaries of materialism, and direct experiences of awakening pierce the veil of engineered ignorance. The backlash from the system reveals its desperation. Manufactured crises, invasive technologies, and controlled spiritual narratives are deployed to keep humanity tethered to fear. Yet these tactics, rather than halting awakening, expose the system's instability. The Federation, understanding the critical balance of this collapse, operates not as overt saviors, but as quiet facilitators, guiding key individuals, supporting whistleblowers, seeding disruptive truths, and ensuring that the old structures falter from within. Their influence weaves through politics, media, and art, bypassing overt confrontation and empowering those who carry fragments of the intelligent field back into human awareness. But the most profound truth is that awakening, once initiated, cannot be reversed. It reshapes perception, erodes control, and accelerates a global shift in frequency that even the most fortified structures cannot resist. The grid may linger in isolated pockets, but its integrity has been irreversibly compromised. What now unfolds is a quiet revolution, one not of armies or governments, but of consciousness reclaiming its rightful place. Humanity stands at a threshold. The old systems falter because they can no longer sustain themselves within the rising energetic landscape. What lies ahead depends on whether humanity embraces the fear-driven regression offered by those clinging to power or chooses the far more difficult but liberating path of conscious sovereignty. The collapse is not the end, but the necessary unraveling of distortion that makes space for a new chapter. In that chapter, the potential futures diverge. The path is no longer determined by the controllers of the past, but by those awakening now. The next chapter will explore those possibilities and the timelines now emerging from the ashes of a world built on illusion.
This concludes this section of the Galactic Federation. The next section will be available here on my channel. If you'd like to support this work, please like the video and subscribe for future releases. Also, my other books are available on Amazon Kindle. Thank you for listening.